Hi there. I'm Andrew D. Meredith, fantasy author of the Collation Saga and Needle and Leaf series, and then right there, Quaint Creatures, Magical and Mundane, which is a cozy fantasy about a magical veterinarian. I wanted to have a conversation today about dialogue. It was requested by our friend Kentucky Squirrel over on Twitter that I talk about how to write good dialogue. I've been writing now for 8 years, since 2017, and even 6 years before that, in 2010 and 2011, I had written my first novel, which did not have good dialogue, nor really good anything, in my opinion. But I took a break from that to do some board game writing for in-fiction board game fiction, and then finally in 2017, I buckled down and started writing what we now know as the Collation Saga, which is right here. I don't know exactly what it is that I fixed in myself that improved my dialogue. Maybe it was a little bit of life experience, but I will say that one of the things that I worked really hard on was not being someone who did a lot of info dumping. Yet I'm still known as someone who has a lot of world building. And the way I do that is through my outlining. Now, not every author is an outliner. Not every author is going to be a discovery writer. I kind of sit at a weird in-between point. But outlining, as you know, is setting everything on paper and what you want to have happen, and then keeping to that script. In the case of discovery writing, you have an idea of where your endpoint is, and you just set out on your journey and get there. I am someone who plans my journey as opposed to telegraphs my journey on a outline. So I don't plan every single thing that has to be said, but rather I just plan my journey. I plan that where I'm going to be stopping for lunch, where I'm going to be stopping for dinner, where I hope to be by this particular time so that I can be at my hotel that night. So that's how I plan it, but I don't know what's going to happen in between. I don't know what music I'm going to listen to. I don't know what audiobooks I'm going to put in while I'm driving, but I have a plan for where I'm going to try to get to and where I'd like to stop on the way. In case I get to a place where I realize I'm not hungry, I could go a little bit farther, that's okay. And that tends to lead to my characters being a little bit more organic in their actions so that they get to say what they want to say on the journey. I found that if I try to outline actual conversations, if I say at this chapter, I want these two characters to have this conversation about this world event, one, it's going to be forced and feel very info dumpy. And two, more often than not, by the time I get to that point in the plot, I find that the conversation has already happened, maybe more naturally somewhere else, or I find that that conversation is no longer necessary, and I end up with a gap in my outline. And it would be fine to say, well, that means you get to write a shorter book, right? Only it throws off whatever pacing that I have planned over the course of my writing. So what I say is, as you're preparing, it's not bad to create a side list of maybe some important information that you want to convey to the reader, important arguments you want two characters to have, but keep them as a bullet list that's kind of a footnote to your outline, and then plan your outlines in a destination-based way. That also allows you to kind of keep an eye open for tension and insert tension where there isn't any. Often by the time I finish a first draft, I will then replot my entire arc and figure out where is there tension and where are there gaps in my story where there's not tension, and I can input an argument that I haven't pulled out of my bullet point list, right? Put that in there and make sure it works together. But I will say, there's two things that are going to make your conversations more natural. First is to just let them happen when they happen, just like in normal life. And two, write your book. Get through your first draft. Being done with your first draft offers you something to edit, right? You can't edit a blank page. There is very often times when I am writing, and while I'm writing a scene, I think, oh, this is a terrible scene. This is a really bad conversation. I don't like this. But I need to get out of my system and move on to the next scene and continue on. Then when I come back, I can take that scene that wasn't working really well and modify it to foreshadow things that I haven't written yet, because now I have written it, right now that I've written the entire first draft. So let the conversations happen naturally. Another way to help improve your dialogue is to consume media that has dialogue that you want to convey. If you're trying to create more natural sequencing, more natural breaths between the storms, look at Studio Ghibli and Miyazaki's commentary online about the Japanese term ma. He described it as there is action and there is ma. That when you clap, the silence between the claps is the ma, or the moments. Those quiet train rides that don't have anything to do with the plot. They're just moments of normalcy, I call them. Ma and moments of normalcy, or just folding in reality into your story, is going to improve those conversations. One of the best examples I can give of that is a campfire scene where your characters have set camp or are sitting around a tavern table and they're having a conversation. Think of when you go out to a restaurant or you're sitting in front of a campfire. You aren't just having a conversation back and forth. That's not how it works. Conversations are intermixed with one person talking to the other person paying attention, not looking them in the eye. They're looking off and watching the TV screen of the football game that's going on. They're hailing down a waiter in order to ask for a refreshment of their drink. You can insert those things into a dump of information, and it will pace things out in a more natural way that allows your readers to better digest what's going on. It also shows that they haven't stopped to have a conversation with one another. Instead, they have set up camp, and while you're putting stakes into your tent or steaks into your meal on the fire, you are having a conversation at the same time, and it lets you take that time to really digest what they're saying. Another way to just avoid awkwardness in your conversations is to look at each conversation and say, have I info dumped here? Ask yourself that honest question. Have I said something that could have been said later? Or have I said something that doesn't need to be said at all? There are times when your characters will just start orating about things, but there's often an opportunity in those cases to not say everything. To have somebody who's starting to say something info dumpy, as we do if we're explaining something to a friend, where it gets cut off and then never gets picked back up again. It leaves the readers hanging because it wasn't an important thing for the plot, but maybe it was a little tidbit you wanted to share. As an example, you can share a lot of information with very little work by just noticing things, having characters notice things, or during the exposition of introducing a town. You don't need a wall of text to explain a town. You can have a simple touch of when characters are walking down the street and they smell bakeries nearby. So you know that there's a row of bakeries nearby, maybe not just one. Or they see that there's glass works leaning out on the street, maybe even broken glass here and there that says that there's both glaziers that work here, which means that this city has an industry of glass, but also they might be in a bad part of town if there's glass broken on the street. And you can put that into conversations too. You can have characters notice something that another character doesn't, or vice versa. Your main character may not have a sense of smell. You can decide that that is something that is a handicap of theirs. They have no sense of smell. But the person they're traveling with does. And they mentioned that they noticed the smell of baked goods and we should go get some. And go off on the side and get themselves some cinnamon rolls. So there's opportunities for you to share little things about characters by not sharing things through exposition, but through conversation. And then vice versa. Are there times when you as the narrator need to share what is being seen or heard or touched or tasted or smelled by the particular point of view that you're in that the other characters are not going to notice? And I'll just close this up. I think that's also leads into you should have a list of things about each character that you want to share without ever saying explicitly. That if you have a character who's anal retentive and is very fastidious, show them doing that. And then have them complain about others who aren't doing that if it's something that it causes them an irritation. Have a list of their minor handicaps, that they are hard of hearing in one ear. Write it down. You never have to say it. You can just have them, excuse me, with one ear. Or maybe it's that they don't have a handicap of hearing, but they get overstimulated in a crowd, and so they really have a hard time listening to someone talking, and so they have to really lean in every conversation. And now you have a personal mannerism, them leaning in. Describe those little things that don't ever say explicitly why they're doing it. Let the readers infer it from what you say. Anyway, I hope that helps, and I hope that you were able to improve your dialogue by writing more of it. And if you have questions, comments, please leave them down below. I'm found on all social media platforms at Andrew D. MTH for Meredith. So follow me, subscribe here, click that notification bell, and I'll see you next time.